Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to Virtual Thursday's Dire Literary Series. And after I do the stream setup, I just come to life. Um, we have with us tonight Mr. George Peterson, a gentleman that I know very well. And he's going to talk about his book, talk about what he does with his meditation, um, his workshops, all kinds of fun stuff. And let me. Let me tell you a little bit about George. It's funny, George does not have your typical author bio, but we learn all about George. He's high quality personal instructor for people looking for something more than meditation apps and online courses. He has unmatched, elevated level of ongoing support from his students. So this is just some of his stuff. This is his book. I don't know if did the book transfer on the screen?
Yes.
So there's the book Thrive, How to Use Meditation to Overcome the Things That Are Holding You Back, George S. Peterson. Welcome, George.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me on here, Tim. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. Should I
Okay,
start off by reading a little bit, you were saying?
that would be excellent. So read for a little bit and then we'll chat.
Awesome. So I just opened up the book and picked a random page to start reading on. This is from one of the chapters in the book where the subtitle of the chapter is Where Attention Goes, Energy Flows. And says when you're first attempting to overcome an addiction, most people will probably not be perfect right from the very beginning. At some point, you're likely to fall short of your commitment at least once. Perhaps it's an addictive be perhaps it's not an addictive behavior, but another area of your life where you've fallen short. Somewhere along the line, if you're like most people, I'm sure you have made a promise to yourself that ended up that you ended up making an excuse for not following through on later. When you beat yourself up and stay in shame when you fail to meet your goal, you perpetuate the very cycle you are trying to escape from. This is often true with new meditators who don't make time for their meditations for a few days. When they make a big deal of it and stay wrapped up in guilt about not meditating, they cannot easily inspire themselves to get back on the wagon. Instead, they usually use their slip as an excuse to continue not meditating for a prolonged period. The very same cycle that is causing them to feel guilty in the first place ends up getting perpetuated. It's easy to think if I don't feel guilty about all the bad things I do, then why will I ever change my behavior? But the opposite of this is true. The more guilt you feel, the more you will prolong the very thing you don't want. Where attention goes, energy flows. In other words, when you put your attention on the things you don't want to happen, the likelihood of them happening again increases. Just like um, a story that perfectly oh wait, sorry, lost my place there. Just like when you are learning in meditation to come back to the mantra, you are also learning to break free from the hindrances that keep you from feeling like you are thriving by gently drifting back to your goals instead of shaming yourself for falling short. You're learning to see how your slips can help you evolve, grow, and become better instead of focusing on the negative, which keeps you stuck in the problem and feeling shame. Your attention, known as soma in Sanskrit, is powerful, and meditation is like fertilizer for your attention. However, whether you're a meditator or not, whatever you focus on the most in your life will grow. Therefore, you must become more conscious of where your attention is going so you can water the proverbial roses, not the weeds. A story that perfectly depicts the importance of this is a story some of my teachers have shared with me about a man watering his beautiful garden of roses. One day the man was out watering his garden One day, while the man was out watering his garden, he noticed a small patch of weeds. He took much pride in his rose garden, so he was less than thrilled when he realized there was a patch of weeds popping up. He accidentally watered them because he stood complaining about the weed patch with his hose running in his hand. He continued complaining, accompanied by accidentally water. His continued complaining, accompanied by accidentally watering, went on for many days, and each time the weed patch would get watered a little more, causing it to grow even more significant. The man accidentally watered the weeds while complaining about them so many times that they took over the entire garden. Instead of focusing on the roses in his garden and doing what he could to get rid of the weeds, the man focused on complaining about the weeds causing the problem to grow. Moral of the story is there are always going to be roses and there are always going to be weeds in your life, and it's up to you which one you focus on. Your role is to learn to find the roses and put your attention there. Your role is to learn to find the roses and put your attention there. First and foremost, the roses are the things you can be grateful for, as as well as the way life is going down for you, not to you. Focusing on the roses is about focusing on what you can learn in all situations and how you can use those experiences to help others. In other words, you want to become more disciplined about increasing the amount of attention you put on what is right about your life in the world. Conversely, the weeds are what you perceive as wrong in your life or the world. It's up to you which one you put more of your attention on. The question is, will you water the roses or the weeds, because both will grow if you keep placing your attention on them. So maybe that's a good place to stop.
All right, George Peterson, author of Thrive. So I've got a few questions. Don't worry about what's in the chat. I will get to those questions naturally here. So writing this book, how does it, in terms of the process, how does your hands-on work translate into book form? Did you have difficulty making that jump?
Um, Actually, the hands-on work that I do made making that jump a lot easier. I actually have a daily email that I write. It's called George's Daily Motivation, where I send out a few paragraphs every day to inspire people for their day. And writing has really helped me to organize my thoughts and become a better speaker and a better teacher. And so having all that practice writing my daily newsletter, also talking about stories like the one I just shared of, I one of the stories I've shared with my students a lot of times is, look, if I have a watering pail and I bend over and I look at the roses and water falls on them, they're going to grow. I bend over and look at the weeds and water falls on them, they're going to grow. It's up to us which one we put our attention on. And so being practiced in telling these stories and then writing every day and that helping me to organize my thoughts helped me when it came time when I decided to write a book to put all my thoughts together and organize them in a way that I could really feel good about.
Did you use your daily emails did you sample them for the actual text of the book?
No, I'm actually the book I'm working on now is going to be like a daily reflections book. It's going to be like 365 daily, we'll call them doses of inspiration to inspire you for your day. But, um, and I use that term because my meditation teacher actually used to send out a daily newsletter called the Daily Dose of Inspiration. So I took the daily motivation newsletter that I write and decided that I was gonna not obviously use the same ones I've already sent out, but maybe use some of them for inspiration for the ones that will be in the book, and then obviously write some completely new ones as well. But there are things I'm sure that I wrote throughout that time of having my newsletter that I've been writing daily for a while now that inspired the content that I did put in this book, Thrive.
All right, Robert has a question about the demographics of your reader. So what's your typical reader like?
There's a few different demographics. One is for this book in particular, it was for somebody who, maybe struggled to have a daily meditation practice, right? Maybe new to meditation, maybe have tried apps and, had not found long-term success or wasn't able to cultivate a daily meditation practice for themselves and was looking for something that could start to make meditation a little bit more easy and enjoyable for them. And for people who felt like there was something in their life that was holding them back. That's why it's called Thrive, how to use meditation to overcome the things that are holding you back. Because I actually write in the book how I believe that, like, for instance, addiction is any behavior we continue to do despite the fact it brings negative consequences. So I think we all do things that hold us back. And I think we probably actually all, if you use that definition, have addiction. But, I do see just I'm an individual myself in long-term recovery. I've been sober 13 years, and I saw just being in and out of different recovery groups how much information there was out there about meditation, but how much of a lack of understanding about the practice there was. And there's that saying, there's no wrong way to meditate. And what I discovered is that is not actually true. Because if I'm standing on my head with peanut butter on my face and calling that meditation, not going to get the same benefits as what I wrote about in the book. So what I think that statement really means is that there's many different approaches, just like there's many different approaches to, making money or playing golf or something like that. But just like anything that has many different approaches, there's still best practices. And when you understand meditation's best practices, you learn to make meditation work for you instead of feeling like you have to work so hard to meditate. And that's what I started noticing most people's experience was, is meditation felt more like a chore, right? They did it because they know they should or they know it's good for them, but they didn't really enjoy it. And so I wanted to write the book for people so they could take meditation out of the I should do because I know it's good for me category and put it in the I get to do category where they could wake up looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm in some of the same recovery type of groups. And what I always hear when people talk about that meditation step, I always hear people say, I can't. It's not like they're not disciplined enough to do it. I can't. I can't get my mind around that. Does your book address that at all?
Absolutely. I mean, because that's the I heard that same narrative, when I got sober, and I used to hear people say they literally couldn't sit still for 5 minutes without wanting to jump out of their own skin. And like I said, meditation for me, when I learned meditation's proper mechanics, became one of the easiest, most enjoyable things I got to do all day long. And actually, when I learned to meditate with my teacher, I knew the second day of the training that I needed to learn how to teach this because I knew other people out there had to be feeling like I was feeling, which was when I would meditate, I'd just be sitting there with my eyes closed, wondering if it was working or not, not really sure if everybody else wasn't really having an experience or they were. And it honestly was more frustrating than it was anything else. And so once I learned meditation's proper mechanics and meditation became something that I started waking up looking forward to, I wanted to share that experience with other people.
So Robert also says, what are the credentials that an author needs so readers will buy the book? And I'm going to twist it up a little bit. Do your credentials as a teacher help sell the book, or does the book help sell you as a teacher?
I'd say it's not an either or, it's a both and. It's, my credentials, have sold me a lot of books because I've hosted 20 global wellness retreats. I'm about to host my 21st meditation retreat in Bali. And so I have a lot of students all over the world. And so I was lucky. The process was kind of cool. Like I wanted to make sure I owned the content. I didn't have a publisher, but I hired this company called Scriptor Publishing and I paid them to essentially take the book from the manuscript that I turned into them and turn it into a self-published book for me. And they made the illustrations and they were amazing to work with. And they did everything through Amazon so I could self-publish the book. And then um, what happened was is once they put it up there, they helped me set up a pre-sale on Amazon. And then with the pre-sale, because I had all these students who'd come on all these retreats and come to my Learn to Meditate courses, I actually pre-sold the book on my own before it actually hit Amazon. And so I was able to, it was really helpful because I was able to do the pre-sale myself. I didn't have to distribute the funds between myself and Amazon, and I had a lot of support from my students, and so that was actually the biggest portion of my sales. I sold a lot of copies by doing that pre-sale to my students, so that was super helpful. And then because of the book, it's helped draw in a lot of new students. Like I've had a lot of people reach out to me who haven't done my in-person Learn to Meditate course, who want to come on a retreat or want to learn to meditate with me at one of my 4-day courses because they read the book and it onboarded them to the practice.
Yes, credentials sound like they're important. Another question: what would you say is the best approach to meditation? I already know what your approach is, but what do you recommend for maybe a newcomer?
I mean, I recommend checking out the book. It's it's it is supposed to help people start cultivating a daily meditation practice for themselves. It's a great practice to onboard you to meditation, right? It's like, so what I teach in my in-person training, which somebody would learn on a retreat or in my in-person course, is like the Tesla. And then what I teach in the book is like the Vespa. And they're still both two vehicles for getting you to your destination. It's just one is a little bit more powerful vehicle for settling the mind, releasing stress from the body, and accessing more expanded states of consciousness through the practice. But the book will still give you that experience. I'd say the biggest thing about the meditation technique I teach and why I would suggest it is because there's two main forms of meditation. There's one that's best suited for a monk, but none of us are monks, so we wouldn't be on this call. And in India, there's another term for people who aren't monks. It's called a householder, which means everyday person like me and you who still wants to experience meditation's benefits but doesn't want to be a monk. And so the householder approach is much more easy and enjoyable for people like us. And so if we try to practice those techniques that were best suited for a monk, our experiences are very difficult. So this makes meditation much more easy and enjoyable. Even one of the first steps in the book I talk about is meditate effortlessly. No matter what type of meditation you do, and this might not align with the type of meditation you do, but what I would suggest that could start to make meditation feel more easy and enjoyable for you is one of the first steps I talk about in the book is to sit effortlessly, meaning comfortably, right? So you don't have to have your legs perfectly crossed and your back perfectly straight. You still want to sit up, but you want to be comfortable. You want to have back support. Your fingers don't have to be touching because if you're uncomfortable, like if I tried to sit with my legs crossed, no back support, and keep my spine perfectly erect for 20 minutes, right, which is how long I meditate for 20 minutes in the morning and then 20 minutes again later in the day, I'd just be sitting there thinking about how uncomfortable I was the whole time. So something very simple like that can totally change the way that the practice lands for you.
And I think Joseph asked, do you have to do a preparation to enable you to meditate? And I'm not sure if he means immediately before meditating or when you're starting out. So maybe you can answer both of those.
Yeah, there's no prerequisites from learning to meditate this way. Actually, being in recovery, I have a lot of people call me and they'll say, "Oh, this person's newly sober, and once they've been sober for a little bit, I want them to learn to meditate with you. I just don't think they're ready yet because, they're just getting sober." And my philosophy is much different than that. I actually think people should learn to meditate this way even before they're willing to get sober. My experience is this, is that if you start meditating and you have a daily meditation practice like this, the experience from drugs and alcohol or whatever your addiction is, whatever that negative habit you continue to do despite the fact it brings negative consequences, right? The experience from that, it won't be able to compete with the new experience that meditation's giving you. And so eventually you'll just become more naturally disinterested in the addictive behavior. And so there's no prerequisites. It doesn't matter what you have going on, even if you're really struggling. It's actually a great time to learn because it's probably going to help accelerate how quickly you're able to evolve through whatever it is that you're up against right now. And one of the biggest benefits of meditation, I talk about this in my in-person training. I say we're not meditating to get good at meditation, we're meditating to get good at life. Nobody cares that you're good at meditation, but everybody cares you're good at life. And so one of the ways we measure progress in meditation is by your ability to better adapt to the day's changes outside of the practice, right? So um, I'm going through some stuff in my family right now. And because I have a daily meditation practice, I have more of what my teacher taught me is unoverwhelmability. the ability to be less overwhelmed by life's demands right now. Right. And so I'm able to navigate those experiences with a little bit more grace because I have more rest to deal with the day's stress. I'll end with this like sleep. Unfortunately, I watched a TED talk and I talk about this a little bit in the book. A neuroscientist said that human beings in the last 25 years are dealing with the same amount of stress in one day that for the 250 years prior to that, they used to deal with over the course of their entire lifetime. And any system he was saying, which includes the human nervous system, which is overstimulated like this, it moves into a state of disorder and imbalance. So sleep is not enough rest to deal with the day's stress. So when we experience stress, eventually we don't have enough rest to deal with that and we snap. But if we're meditating this way, our body's actually receiving what starts to happen when you get this deep healing rest is the opposite physiological changes that take place in the body when you go into the fight flight response start to take place in meditation, right? So your heart rate starts to come down, your breathing starts to decrease, your blood pressure goes down. So you have more rest, so you can better deal with that stress without being so overwhelmed, without snapping as often. Because we know what happens when we snap. The other person snaps back and you go to sleep. You don't get a good night's sleep. You wake up even less rested. And you're snapping even earlier in the day. And so this helps to prevent that.
It sounds like a lot of outside stuff you can fix by working with it internally, like recovery and mental health. And maybe you're an a-hole. Meditation can help you respond to things better. What about someone that doesn't return text messages? Can meditating make you feel better about that?
I think that I'll
I
say
was waiting to ask that question this
I
entire
was I'll say this that the freshly meditated version of you is going to outperform the non-meditated version of you 7 days a week, 365 days a year, no matter what it is you're got going on right now.
Now, when you're writing a book on meditation, do you meditate before you start writing?
Yeah, so even now I'm writing another book and I get up every day. First thing I do is meditate. One of my first teachers taught me an acronym, RISE P meditate, RPM, right? And then it's done, you don't have to worry about it. And then you don't know what's going to happen when you get up out of the bed. You might get a phone call, somebody needs your help, right? This is just going to help you be a better version of yourself for no matter what you have to come up against during the day. So first thing I do is I get up, I go to the bathroom, I brush my teeth, I meditate. And then now, like this morning, right after I meditated, I actually jumped on a call with a fellow meditation teacher who's writing a memoir, and we wrote our book for 2 hours together. Right. And every day I meditate before I write because meditation, I believe, gives us space for our daily downloads. Like one of the hardest things about writing the daily newsletter is because I thought when I started writing it, I was going to run out of inspiration. And what I've realized is that every day when I meditate, I get fed inspiration. Like if you've ever read the book, uh, The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, Stephen Pressfield talks about like the muse, and there's this muse that will feed us ideas, but the only way we get fed those ideas, that inspiration is by showing up and writing each day. And for me, it's like by clearing the stress out, by meditating, I'm making room for the muse to give me those creative bursts of inspiration, which then inspire my writing.
Tell me a little bit about the George Peterson podcast. And when you do this podcast, do you find that you learn from your guests and your guests learn from you, or is it more like common interest between your guests and yourself?
Oh, I'd say it's all of it, right? I definitely learn from my guests. I hope they learn from me. I know I've had people who are students or listeners who write me and say, "Oh, I got a lot of value out of what you said on this podcast." I had a woman the other day say, she's one of my students, said that some random person stopped her on the road who knew that she was in my coaching program and said, "Oh, I'm listening to the best podcast by your teacher, George, right now." And she was just on a walk in her neighborhood. And I don't even know this woman. And so um, I think hopefully people learn from it. And I definitely learned from them. And then, too, it's just it's a good exchange just being in the relational field with somebody else and seeing the inspiration that comes when two people come together and um, have that intention to help heal and serve others through the platform of the podcast.
Now, when meditation is presented like in a television show or a movie, what's the biggest So someone that doesn't meditate will see this on the screen. What's the biggest misconception that's presented to majority of people?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would say there's two. One, that you have to sit like a monk, right? Because usually, if you, even if you Google meditation, what are you going to see? Legs crossed, back perfectly straight, fingers touching, but also that um, you have to stop your thoughts in order to, you know, have a successful meditation, right? Or that you can force your mind to stop thinking, right? What I learned is that the mind thinks involuntarily, like the heart beats involuntarily, right? So the biggest misconception is that we can give our mind a command to stop thinking, because giving your mind a command to stop thinking is like trying to give your heart a command to stop beating. It's impossible, right? And so while, you know, um, I talk sometimes in my intro talks, I talk about the three keys to changing our relationship with meditation. The first one being you never have to sit in an uncomfortable position again. The second one is that you never have to try to quiet your mind, right? Because if you try to force your mind to be quiet, you're actually going to get the opposite of a quiet mind, which is a busy mind, right? And so we can't stop our thoughts, but we can learn to what we call transcend them. And so what does transcend mean? Means to go beyond. And so that's, I think, the misconception is you can just stop your thoughts. But when you learn to go beyond your thoughts and access that quiet, right, that's underneath that busy surface focused thinking zone of your mind, it's like your mind's like the ocean. And the waves on the surface are like all your thoughts. And if you did a cross section picture of the ocean, you'd see that even when there's all these crazy waves on the surface, at the bottom, where let's say it's 500 feet deep, the ocean's still calm. The problem is most people haven't been taught how to go from the busy surface of their mind down to the bottom of the ocean where things are calm. So that's what I try to give people tips for in the book, and that's what I teach people in my in-person training.
All right. That's fantastic. So the book is, there's George's page. If you want to find out more about George, how to get the book, about some of his meditative getaways to Bali, which you can sign up for, georgespeterson.com. Here is Thrive. It's a beautiful orange cover. And there's information about the Bali retreat and everything you want to know about George and breathwork healing. We didn't actually talk specifically about the healing aspect of it, but so check it out with the book, the breathwork healing, the podcast. Everything's there on the website, georgespeterson.com. And thank you, George. It was really nice to see you and see the book out there in the world. It's wonderful stuff.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you everybody who came. Joseph, Robert, Nike, very grateful to have you all here and to share a little bit about my book, and hopefully you receive some value out of our conversation.
All right. And those that are watching the live stream on various social media channels, I'm going to shut you guys down. But if you're interested in reading any of your poetry or short works in the open mic, just use the Zoom link and I'll be happy to let you in. So thanks for watching on the streams as well.